Open for Business is presented by Eagle Broadcasting Corporation and Globe My Business. Create your success.
Greetings from the Philippines to the world. It's June Manila. We are on Facebook Live on Eagle News and also on our digital channel eaglenewslive.com. Watch us also on YouTube. Just click on YouTube channel at Eagle News. I am Cesar Vallejos. Welcome to the 54th episode of Open for Business. Join me discover the latest news and information in business around the world. Stay ahead of the curve from vision to action. On July 13, to celebrate the SME month, we are inviting you to the Open for Business online and TV launch here at the EBC Atrium at the Eagle Broadcasting Corporation headquarters, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Registration starts at 8 a.m. for the trade fair, SME seminars, and the formal launch of Open for Business on Net 25. Open for Business will not only be online, it will also be on TV starting July 13. Mark your calendar, everyone's invited. And to our feature today, the peso is 51.71 pesos against the dollar. And at the closing of trade last Friday, the Philippine Stock Exchange Index closed at 8,055.47, up 33.05 points or 0.41%. Total approved investments recorded by the Philippine Board of Investments from January to May 2019 reached 290.6 billion, a 40.1% increase from 207.5 billion in the same period last year. Singapore, Netherlands, Thailand, Japan, and the United States are the top 5 biggest foreign investors for the period. The investments go into power, manufacturing, information and communication, and tourism accommodation projects. While there seemed to be a sustained investor confidence for the Philippines, how can these be translated to actual economic benefits for the small and medium enterprises? What are the opportunities of SMEs that capitalize on the inflow of foreign investments? From the perspective of foreign investors, what are their challenges as they continue to do business here in the Philippines? Let's hear it from Kieran Martin, Director of Index Asia Philippines, after these headlines from Business Mirror. 6% growth still possible in 2019 according to NEDA. BSP opts for prudent pause. And Duterte approves development plan for mid-level Pinoy workers. And here are the... Despite project delays caused by the 2019 budget impasse and global economic headwinds, the National Economic and Development Authority remains confident growth of above 6% is attainable this year. Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Ernesto Pernia said the economy can still grow by 6.5% this year. This is within the 6 to 7% growth target for 2019 but below the PDP target of 7 to 8%. Pernia lamented that the budget impasse was really a major factor for why the economy could not grow faster this year. Our economic outlook this year is still quite respectable, and we will remain among the best performing economies in Asia, but we will not be able to achieve our 7 to 8% economic growth target. Pernia added the delay in the 2019 budget passage prevented government spending from boosting the GDP. Government spending, he said, is a traditionally strong stimulus for the economy. He said ideally, every peso spent by the government translates to benefits worth 10 pesos. The size of the impact of government spending on the economy means incomes for government suppliers and jobs. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas maintained its monetary policy settings unchanged on Thursday as the Monetary Board deemed it necessary to pause for a while and observe recent economic developments in the country. BSP Governor Benjamin Jokno announced in a press briefing that the central bank's overnight reverse repurchase or RRP facility is still at 4.5%. The interest rates on the overnight lending and deposit facilities were likewise left untouched. A prudent pause allows the BSP to observe and assess the impact of prior monetary adjustments, including the phased reduction in the reserve requirements to be completed by the end of July, Jokno said. Going forward, the BSP will continue to monitor emerging price and output conditions to ensure that monetary policy remains in line with the BSP's price stability objective while being supportive of economic growth. Weaker global economic prospects amid a possible easing in global demand and increased trade tensions continue to temper the inflation outlook. The potential adverse effects of a prolonged El Nino episode remain a key upside risk to inflation, the governor said. BSP Deputy Governor Diwa Ginigundo announced the Monetary Board has scaled down its inflation forecast to 2.7% from 2.9% in May. And Filipino workers will soon be equipped with the necessary skills, knowledge, and attitudes to stay competitive against the challenges brought by the Fourth Industrial Revolution as President Duterte approved a new comprehensive development plan for middle-level manpower. Through the newly signed Executive Order 83, President Duterte has green-lighted the adoption of the National Technical Education and Skills Development Plan 2018 to 2022, which envisions a vibrant, quality technical, vocational, and educational training for decent employment and sustainable inclusive growth to mobilize, galvanize, and strengthen the sector to attain global competitiveness and workforce readiness, as well as social equity for workforce inclusion and poverty reduction. Middle-level manpower includes those who have acquired practical skills and knowledge through formal or non-formal education and training equivalent to at least a secondary education, but preferably post-secondary education with a corresponding degree or diploma, and skilled workers who have become highly competent in their trade or craft as attested by the industry. And the first 5G in Southeast Asia is now in the Philippines. Globe Telecom will offer next month a fifth generation or 5G wireless broadband for Philippine homes, the first commercially available internet with such speed in Southeast Asia. We made a crucial step in fulfilling our goal of connecting more Filipino homes, Ernest Gu, president at Globe, said in a news statement. Offering 5G speed, which is faster and more secure, will help the company's 2020 goal of connecting 2 million households to its various home internet products from 1.7 million in the first quarter, Gu said. The venture of Ayala Corporation and Singapore Telecoms Limited will initially offer 5G packages in Pasig City in the capital region and in nearby provinces of Cavite and Bulacan. When Open for Business returns, we will have Kieran Martin, Director of Index Asia Philippines. Open for Business will be back. Stay with us.
Open for Business is presented by Globe My Business. Create your success.
Open for Business is back, and with me is the Director of Index Asia Philippines, Mr. Kieran Martin. Thank you for coming to the
Thank you
show,
so much.
Kieran. It's very interesting that we see a lot of foreign investments coming in now. As a matter of fact, in the previous reports that I said, we have seen a huge increase of foreign investments from January to May compared to the same period last year. So the first question is, what makes the Philippines very attractive to foreign investors?
Yeah, well, definitely there are a lot of elements, and talking about direct foreign investments, I think even compared to the 10 years ahead, it's been booming ever since. So I think it can be identified through the market, of course, that is. Really currently exposed to a certain level of growth due to the population that is exploding. Now we're like 105 million people living in the Philippines.
Now some say it's 106,
Yeah, 106
or
or 7,
sometimes it's 109.
Yeah,
I think
so
that when I attended the latest e-commerce summit, I think I saw a slide there. It's 109 already.
yeah, maybe, yeah.
Okay. So there we have a very
the-
huge population.
Exactly, a huge population, and of course, there's the growth that is related to that, to the consumption. The population is also earning more from the previous. They're in the better shape. So there's the market size. There's also the natural resources also that are attractive in the Philippines. For the mining activities, like mining, like tourism, and of course all the assets that can be acquired here. So for those three elements, they're all booming, and this is also related to maybe some incentives from the government to develop through the like the BBB, the PPP program, build. So there's some investments that will be made by the government and also with private individuals, or private companies. So that's why it's really the right time, I think, for a lot of investors to come in.
Okay, so you mentioned the elements, like we have the huge population, and also we have infrastructure support. So,
infrastructure support.
And that is what we really needed. Now, on the foreign investor perspective, I know that you are focusing here in the Philippines.
Yes.
Can you identify which of the sectors that you want these investments to come in? Because again, in my earlier report, there are a lot of interest in power, in manufacturing, in tourism. In your case, what are these sectors or industries that you think that is really very attractive to foreign investors, like the ones that you belong to?
Yeah, well, I think infrastructure definitely, for especially what we call the defensive type of businesses, the ones that are required, whatever the stage the company is, the country is in. So you will always need like healthcare. You will always need education, food and beverage. All those industries, they are growing as well as the rest of the country, right? The population. So this is always interesting. It's safe businesses, safe industries. So then you can definitely forecast, like the future revenues out of it. So of course this is safe for investors. But also on the consumer side, it's booming as well. Through the consumption on the market.
Now, in your case, Kieran, you give financial advice to a lot of companies and make sure that they are investing on the appropriate markets and to come up with their strategies to really make sure that they would get very good financial advice as far as where their investments should come in. In the parameters of giving financial advice to these companies, what are the major factors that you let them make sure that everything would be right as far as the appropriate blueprint for investments is concerned?
Well, yeah, there are many things to check. I think on my end, I will definitely more work on the company level. So what I can prepare for the foreign investors is really making sure that the company will be ready for investments.
Okay.
So what it means is you have to have a certain level of guarantee on the definitely the macro level, so the market, the evolution, is it a right market to come in, to go in, but also on the operations level, like for example, what is the current financial statements of the company? Is it like fully optimized? So you give some insights to that company to optimize those areas, and gives insights to the foreign investors to say, okay, this is a company that is leading in its market, or it is well positioned in its market for those reasons. So you can explain with those financial aspects, and of course you can do some like optimization on the structuring, or making sure that it's relevant for an investor to come in, and even more for a foreigner. When you can jump a little bit more into the analysis of the operations, where the foreigners can share their expertise, this is something that they can really be interested in, actually, because the Philippines is not such a competitive market yet, where even though it's a big market. So that's why you have like maybe more companies that were more exposed to competition that would be happy to come in here. And through another company, like a partnership or.
Now, I noticed that with your company, you're focused on the ASEAN market.
Yeah.
As you mentioned offline, you're also focusing on the Vietnam market, the Philippines, and also you have separate engagements with Singapore. In your dealings with all these foreign investors and local companies in those respective areas, what is the common factor that both the companies in the emerging industries or emerging economies like the Philippines is looking for? What are they looking for in this developing economies like the Philippines?
Well, I think it's again related to all those micro aspects. Why we do focus on those two emerging markets is because the way it's foreign investments are organized, it's through hubs, right? You have like Hong Kong, China, definitely US, Europe, and maybe Singapore. It depends on the financial places, but the markets are maybe in those emerging countries. So that's why on our end we're happy to be able to source the right projects, like the right SMEs that are ready for investments in those emerging countries, so Vietnam, Philippines, whereas the investors are usually based in those hubs. So what they're looking for is, again, very diverse. There's no market in Hong Kong nor Singapore, right? It's two micro countries, so there's no. They have to have activity elsewhere, and that's where you can find it in there.
Okay, interesting. Now, can you cite specific areas or industries where there is a huge demand for foreign investments? Like, example, in power plants, in manufacturing, in tourism. And can you cite case studies where you have given specific advice, and what were the challenges in those experiences?
Yeah, so well, I definitely agree on those interests. I think we can add a lot of them actually on top, but on the infrastructure side, I think there's some challenges around permitting. Also the technology that you can put. It takes a lot of time to really prepare the case and develop that case to make sure that it will be live for the coming 20 years. So it's a bit this is a bit like time consuming, let's say. So it cannot come overnight. You know?
Right.
So of course, once you prepare for a couple of years, then the investment will come. So that's maybe why it starts to increase like so much more, even if the incentives were started a bit earlier from at the government level. So it takes time, but it's getting there. On other industries, like you were mentioning, tourism, which I think is a very, very interesting sector right now in the Philippines, because the demand is exploding. I think there was like 7 million visitors last year, maybe even more. So and the accommodation are not there yet. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement there,
That's
or
right.
even building. So it's one area we're actually active. We're dealing with top 5 hospitality group to come in to help them come in the Philippines. We also help more on the company level, so both with investors or also local players. And for local players, we did help one to develop an area here in Makati that was quite successful, and now he's expanding into El Nido, for example, and there he's building like a big resort that will be like with a lot of green features to really build a community here. And the challenge is where, again, it takes time to really convince the first investors for the first steps, and to be able to acquire the land. There's a timing issue, so you need to be able to source the place, and then get the fundraising to acquire it, and then start on the building and preparation with everything. So that's a timing that some investors might be worried about. You're not so sure on how it can evolve. So
You mentioned about this timing, and you said earlier that you have been here in the Philippines for 3 years already. Have you noticed a change in the ease of doing business? Because recently we passed a law on the ease of doing business as well. So have you seen like the improvement in terms of dealing with the local government units? Because you said you now go into different regions, like in El Nido, for example, you helped an investor create that business acquisition there. So have you seen that kind of improvement for the past 3 years, or in this administration?
Well, I think 3 years is a bit short for me to draw some conclusions. But I think on the registration side for businesses, it seems to be faster. Before, there was like a peak, maybe 2 years ago. It was very it was quite long, and now for one player actually from Vietnam that we helped come here, it took only like a couple of weeks to really incorporate it here. So there's a concrete case where yes, it was way faster. It's also maybe related to the people we were working with, but still, it's a concrete example. Now, for other features such as access to capital, or maybe like permitting, it's not something that I'm an expert about, so I'm not so sure how it can improve there. But definitely on the access of funds, it's also something that we improved as a firm, to know how to find those funds, both locally and internationally. So overall, I would say it seems to be getting better, but in the span of 3 years, I might need a little bit more experience to be able to tell.
Okay. We have more questions to Kieran Martin, the Director of Index Asia Philippines, when Open for Business returns. Stay with us.
Open for Business.
Open for Business is back, and still with me is the Director of Index Asia Philippines, Mr. Kieran Martin. Kieran, our main topic is how can SMEs participate also in this business that's booming. We hear a lot of stories, of foreign investors coming in, but some segments of the market would just inform us that a lot of the chunk of these investments go to the large corporations who have the capacity, the operations, and the financial statements that will attract your foreign investor partners. So, what are your insights, your ideas on how small and medium enterprises can also enjoy the benefits of this growth of foreign investments coming here in the Philippines?
Yeah, well, I think ultimately they will enjoy it because of the trend that those funds will push, right? So if you have like investments made in the infra level, for example, an airport that is built in a remote island. Well, before it was very hard to have an economical activity there. But here, with those investments from foreigners for even different groups, they can still, like SMEs in that area can still thrive, benefiting from those infra. So that's the basic. I think the second big advantage of having foreign investments on which SMEs can also benefit from is on the commercial aspects. Of course, they will be probably able to negotiate a little bit more with foreigners, and especially in case of investments. Usually, it's kind of tricky for SMEs to. There's not so many alternatives, right? If there's an opportunity for investments, it's probably coming from local players, and local players are sometimes big, and it's kind of hard to deal with them. Here, it can provide an alternative with foreigners. So. What is really important for them to have is more like the standard to be eligible for foreign investments. That would be like we were describing earlier, maybe on the financial side. If you have like a good case, it can be interesting for anybody locally or internationally. Now, what's hard for foreign investors most likely is the access to those SMEs. So it's very hard for them actually to know how to contact those SMEs. So maybe they can also be a little bit better on their, or they can, if they can do a bit of a media side, for example, that's like a public relations. If you have this and the financial aspects, they will also be able to be eligible for foreign investments, I would say.
But what is you mentioned about standard? So, like in your case, as someone who provide financial advice to a lot of companies, what is the standard that a lot of foreign investors are looking for in a partner in a specific locality?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, even if we do specialize on, the finance is always the base, I would say, because this is what you can measure. The elements that push the decision are usually related to humans, like human relations, like how do you connect with the managing team of that firm. That is extremely important. So on the standard, I wouldn't say it. You have to act a certain way. It's more like there are some key criteria to assess to see if it can fit the profile of an investor. So definitely on the human side, what is the vision of the team? What they really plan to do. Sometimes they prefer to just sell the company. Sometimes they want to grow as well, and that is very different for the investor you should be talking to.
So it's the composition. It's
really
the composition of the
team. The vision, the team that has the vision and how it can be implemented. The base is definitely the finance, the product inside the company, what is developed there, where is really the value of those numbers in your company. Where is it coming from? Let's say, and definitely, it's. I think that those are the key elements. Like, how do you really forecast the future revenues of that company? Is the basis for any decision, I would say.
Speaking of forecast, so in the field of infrastructure or in healthcare or in tourism, normally, if a foreign investor comes in and comes up with a major project with a local partner, at what specific stage or time frame are they looking at in terms of ROI, or in terms of we know that there's a lot of PPPs also
Yeah.
here, that extends up to certain number of years.
Yeah.
But are there are there specifics in terms of short term, medium term, or long term, and are there specific projects where they can just start with a small one, and it will and the result will be on a shorter period. In your experience, specifically because you somehow are looking at small and medium scale enterprises
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
In terms of the figures, how big the project is and how long is this project? What are the several options that SMEs can look at?
Well, in terms of, you mean in terms of receiving investments?
Yes.
Or, okay. So, well, I think it's we need to differentiate between project financing, which is
Okay.
more on the infrastructure side,
Okay.
and maybe companies that are operating
Okay.
already. The what we like to say on average is you will be safe for or you will be likely to be eligible for an investment if you are able to return to provide an ROI of 15 to 25% per annum. That would be
15
be
to
amazing.
25.
Yeah.
That would be amazing already.
That would be amazing already.
But what is realistic?
Well, that's something we honestly we can find in the Philippines.
Mhm.
There are some projects like that.
Okay.
There is one thing, a very important feature on the side of ROI that we need to understand is also the cost.
Okay.
Of the cost of financing. It's usually hard for SMEs to be able to access to either debt or equity at especially debt at a low level. So investors in equity might require also might be looking for higher returns on that. On that. So that's why it's in terms of ROI, it's sometimes pretty high. But it's a key difficulty here in the Philippines. I think it's the access to debt. Where we hope.
Do you have suggestions on how it can be easier? It can, do you have suggestions on how to make the access easier
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
SMEs?
Well, that's definitely our fight, honestly. So we are really happy to see we're dealing with some banks now here locally, and understanding a little bit more how they can support those SMEs because they want to, but their process is quite long, especially on the financial side. I was saying the banks need to reassess completely the company. It takes like a month to be able to make a decision. They have there's a regulation that impose, I think, if I'm not wrong, in the Philippines to recommend those banks to allocate 10% of their portfolio to SMEs, and I think they're closer to 6. So they want and they need and they want to jump into that. Segment. So it will happen, let's say. Now it's also something that we are happy to provide for the projects that we are helping here, because it's definitely a key element, a key positive element for any equity investments afterwards from foreigners, if you have access to those banks. So this is really, I think, a key differentiation between those that can manage that and the others that maybe struggle a little bit more.
Now, you have a menu of services from fundraising, raising capital, what else, mergers and acquisitions. So can you give, like say, a rundown of these services that SMEs can avail, from financial advisors like you?
Yeah, actually, I would say that it depends on the life of the company.
Okay.
So to start, like I said, I think the very beginning is really access to debt.
Okay.
Because for any type of project, it can be hard at the beginning, but the maybe private individuals that can invest with a debt note, let's say. But access to debt is really the first step, and afterwards it enables you to have like the fundraising aspects, like especially for consumer and infra. Tech companies are a bit different. So it would be fundraising, and then when you reach a certain level or you have a certain vision where you did raise a certain amount to maybe acquire other companies, this is where you jump into the M&A side.
Okay.
So technically it's the same logic, the same service, it's just different type of players that you're dealing with in terms of investments.
Okay. So you've been here, you say 3 years is relatively short, but
Yeah.
definitely you have already, as an expat, you have encountered a lot of challenges in terms of, dealing, making sure that, you have the right financial advice to both the local companies and your principal. So what are those challenges, and how were you able to hurdle each, and what are do you have insights, proposals on how this can still be improved?
Well, I think the most challenges, there's like, of course, many everywhere. I don't know if there are some major ones that I'd like to point out. However, I would definitely say that I understood some key success factors. One would be how to build trust with your client. I think this is especially for a foreigner, I would say. It was maybe harder at the beginning because you arrive here, like it might be harder for a Filipino to understand why you're here, but the level of intensity we implement in the work enables you to build that trust. So there's a lot of requirements to be able to build the project with the owner of the firm, because
So one is building the trust.
Definitely.
So now, okay, what else? But before we go into the other key success factors, one is building trust. In your case, as a foreigner, as an expat, how do you build trust?
Yeah, well, it's I would say it's really related to first communication. It sounds easy, but it's we're lucky to be able to speak English. Here, I mean, with the population here, it's a massive advantage, because there's always, even if there is some level of maybe the literacy rate here is very high, so the Filipinos are maybe better than my English, but I speak better than I do. But let's say
you're excellent. Your English is
French people are known for their accent, but anyway. That the communication is really a great element here. Then the trust is also related to your actions. It's a day-to-day exercise. What do you really want to build with that project? For that project, how do you take decisions, enable to the managing team in place to really take those decisions? And because when you're dealing with investments, it's really important to know that you know what you're doing. Basically, it can change the entire life of the ones that are at the head of it, at the head of the project. So that's why it's a key element. So communication, and then by expertise. If you know how to process your transaction, and that the client sees it, this is when he starts to believe that you know what you're doing, and this is how you build it. So. Communication and expertise, and from there, I think it's a solid base. Of course, you always have some challenges, because sometimes the vision of the team is maybe not possible, or they're expecting it faster in terms of timeline, or those things. But if you can explain, that's the challenge. Maybe it's really like aligning all the time and explaining.
Now, what's your outlook for the Philippines? Are you looking at more investments coming in, and if yes, in what specific areas, what sectors would you think would be? Because right now, I'm sure, because your focus is here in the Philippines, you have somehow identified already, which sectors you would want the foreign investments to come in.
Well, definitely. Well, I think it's really an amazing time right now in the Philippines for any investors. Because the market is really big, the competition is not there yet. There is
What
a lot
is
of
that? You're saying that the competition is not there yet, but on some parameters, what country are we competing with? I know that when you say competition is not there yet,
Yeah.
but like say for example for IT, we have Philippines and India. In your case, in your definition of competition.
I was talking about SMEs because of course as
okay.
industries
Yes,
the
okay.
Philippines is I would say number one in BPO because of their ability to properly speak English.
Correct.
But at the maybe at the macro level, yes, of course there will be the inflow for investments, especially through the new program of the build and the investments from the government, from the private sector, so it will grow as a whole. Now on the SME level, I think there is a little difference between the top players, like
Yes.
in real estate you have for example SM and Ayala. I think they're 1 and 3 the players, number 1 and number 3 all over Southeast Asia, so they're already extremely known. But on the SME level it's harder to pick up. But with those macro trend, they will also now be able to thrive. So that's why when I say competition, it's just that there's for SMEs an opportunity to really pick up. That's more what I meant.
Okay.
Now in terms of industries in particular for those SMEs, like I said, related to infrastructure, there's a lot of opportunities for energy, especially also for we don't know how it will be handled, let's say, but for telco, like connectivity, there will be some innovations there. Now, how can they benefit, or what they could maybe also focus on is definitely tourism. We mentioned real estate. Technically, it's always booming. The population is continuously growing and spread all over the 7,000 islands.
And not only that, with real estate, I just covered the latest APAC Real Estate Investment Trust summit. And they may be launching this year because there are only 2 hurdles, that they're looking at, on the implementing rules and regulations. One is the issue on the VAT, because it has been addressed already because of the train law. But the other one is, I think, the minimum public float of from 67% to 33%, which is a good indication. So again, that's one good development for the real estate, because
that's
a
true.
common person, like us, will be able to go hand in hand with the Taipans in owning a share of the largest real estate properties here in the Philippines. So you mentioned tourism, infrastructure, real
and
estate.
logistics also is another one. Because
correct.
of the geography and the demand there, also because of e-commerce that is thriving. So logistics is I would say is a good industry to look at this year. But you mentioned something very important that I didn't talk about, is actually also regulations about for foreign ownership.
Yes.
I think there are some evolutions there as well.
That's right.
So especially one for financial services. So that I've been following a bit. So there is some ease of enabling foreign investors to come in, and that can be very beneficial. Some industries shouldn't change, like we know, I think, like media or they have to remain core of the country, and I think it's good. But for some other industries, especially on the financial aspects, providing loans to the population, it's a very good,
that's
solution.
another sector, because a lot of SMEs would also want access to credit, and I think there's a lot of initiatives in terms of financial inclusion also.
Yeah, financial inclusion is an extremely big market. I think like the unserved market is about 200 billion US.
Wow.
In the Philippines. So it's like an endless market. It's just extremely hard to really process those loans and being sure that it will be reimbursed or like collected properly. There is some challenges there for those companies, but definitely access to capital or access to funds, let's say, will help the entire economy to grow, to continue to grow. So there are some good trends there. We see a lot of tech companies that are good there actually. And also the fintech sector is really booming.
Yes.
There are some regulations from the BSP also to consolidate maybe the smaller banks to reduce some risks there. So everywhere it's moving in the right direction.
Perfect. Well said. Kieran, we would like to request you to address the audience. What's your advice to small and medium enterprises, especially on how they can really capitalize on this flow of foreign investments? We know that, as you said, every investment, especially now with our latest reports that we're getting, foreign investments are not only concentrated in Metro Manila, but also it goes to different regions of the country. So we see foreign investments being spread all throughout the archipelago. And as someone who is trying to provide advice to both your foreign partners and the local companies, what is your advice to the entrepreneurs who would also want to take a share of this growing investments here in the Philippines?
Well, maybe the best is still to act as normal as they are doing today. Actually, there's no big change in attitude to necessarily do, except like we were saying before, making sure that the financial aspects are well handled, and a little bit of media public relations can always make sense. But I would expect the bigger groups to come to them. Maybe especially on the I expect a lot of commercial developments. So this is most likely how they can benefit from the investments. For example, if you're building a power plant in a remote area in Luzon, they will need manpower. They will need to be able to bring all the required elements for construction. So everything will become lively, and those are third-party players that support the construction of that particular investment made from foreigners. So I think it's more related to the development of those with the players that got investments. They can be really good sources of business development. Now, if you are if you're looking for foreign investments, the two elements that we mentioned before could be enough.
Okay, my last question is, how are you enjoying the Philippines so far? So as an expat, you've been here for 3 years.
Yeah.
Why is how do you see the Philippines, and as a foreigner, what's how do you describe the Philippines and its people?
I think well, just to start with the first question, I definitely love the Philippines. I think it's not something that I could expect. I was a bit abroad before, in some parts of Europe or even Singapore, studying there. But the Philippines is definitely a different country. You were mentioning about the people, yes, we're many of us thinking that the Filipinos are the nicest in the world, or among them, and it's always a pleasure. I mean, it's very important when you want to select where you want to settle. Also, how you communicate with your neighbors. I used to live in Paris, which is one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
I know.
But
I was lucky to go there once.
Okay. Oh yeah, well, so I used to live there, for a couple of years, and I loved it there also.
But you were born in Paris.
I wasn't born in Paris. I just stayed there 2 years.
Okay.
For work. But I switched to the Philippines, and I'm very happy here as well. I mean, it's the same, very different cities. but because of the maybe because of the population, it's quite incredible. And now the last part that I'd like to mention is of course the beauty of the country. Like I've been able to visit some extremely beautiful places.
And I think you've been to more better places than myself.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I said, the classics, but still recommend 100% Palawan and the center of. There's a triangle, between Palawan to maybe Visayas area and up to Legazpi. That region of the Philippines is definitely.
And
unique.
you've traveled that area already.
Yeah, I've been able to.
Been to Palawan, El Nido,
Palawan, El Nido,
Boracay.
Coron, Boracay, yeah, all of them, and Siargao, like we were saying as well. No, I mean, that's why tourism will definitely explode. This is preserved. How many places do you have like of this quality preserved on Earth today?
Wow.
Not so many.
Wow, that's a great end to our interview with Director Kieran Martin of the Index Asia Philippines, and I hope you can come again and maybe guest again, and we invite you to attend the launch of Open for Business online on TV on July 13. Thank you, Kieran, for gracing the show. Open for Business will return with our term of the week and our quote of the week. Stay with us. Thank you. Thank you. Great.
Open for Business.
In our term of the week, you take a refresher of business terms to make you updated, more informed, and ready to make smarter business decisions. Our term of the week is capital. Capital is a term for financial assets such as funds held in deposit accounts. While money is used to purchase goods and services for consumption, capital is more durable and is used to generate wealth through investment. The four major types of capital include debt, equity, trading, and working capital. People often interchange the words capital and money, believing they mean the same thing, but there's a substantial difference between the two. According to Investopedia, capital involves the aspects of the company that helps to shape a company's development and growth. Capital also includes any of its assets that can benefit the company in the long term, whereas money refers to the instruments used to purchase goods and services and serving a more immediate purpose. And our quote of the week is from George Soros. Soros said, "If investing is entertaining, if you're having fun, you're probably not making any money. Good investing is boring." Join us again next Saturday, 5 p.m. Philippine time for another episode of Open for Business, where we discuss business information, deliver the latest business news to keep you informed and open for business and be ahead of the curve from vision to action. You're on Facebook Live on Eagle News, and you can watch us again in the video section of the Eagle News Facebook page and on eaglenewslive.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Eagle News. Also visit postinglive.com for news and updates on Open for Business. And catch me later at 9 p.m. and every Wednesday also on 9 p.m. on Net25's Eagle News International as I report more business news here and around the world. And again on July 13 to celebrate the SME month, we are inviting all of you to the Open for Business online and TV launch here at the EBC Atrium at the Eagle Broadcasting Corporation headquarters, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Registration starts at 8 a.m. for the trade fair and SME seminars and the formal launch of Open for Business on Net25. Open for Business will not only be online, it will also be on TV starting July 13. And on that day, we will be joined by Globe My Business, Titans Business Ventures, Lobien Realty Group, Soul Explorer, Mapilas Realty, and V&A Management Services, Bildia Construction Services, and Green Circle Realty. July 13, mark your calendar. Everyone's invited. For Open for Business, this is Cesar Vallejos. Have a great day.
Open for Business was presented by Eagle Broadcasting Corporation and Globe My Business. Create your success.